business at hand. Let us begin with our prayer before study. Christ, my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work, for to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me, that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person, for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. All right, I will trade you, because I believe you have thoroughly bashed something that you formerly loved. And I have been reading the Tuesday papers, and some of you just chose things that, like saints, it was really tough. I enjoyed reading last week's, and I learned about subjects that I knew nothing about, which was always fun. I am missing your figures of speech, so don't forget to mark those if you did them. Yes, I apologize to you for having to find fault. You are not the only one who did that particular topic either. I have an Ask Me on Liam. Henley, for anaphora, try for 3 in a row. And I'm not completely sure that I think you just randomly wrote figures of speech, and you think I'm not going to notice this, but like your erythema was here. Anyway, please take care. Part of what we're trying to learn to do is to take care with our work. All right? And I know that sounds like a very mom thing to say, but it's honestly true. You can be very average. You can be very average. That actually is the thing I'm going to take a look at in Liam's paper. You can be average, but you will rise above everyone else if you just take extra time and you do a careful job. And then you can be brilliant and be sloppy, and you won't get anywhere. I mean it. So this is good training. It may seem very unimportant to just be neat, write neatly, proofread your papers and everything, but it's indicative of a habit that really, we should do it because it's right and good, but it pays off too. Okay, may I publicly announce you can't be more superior. So you wrote more superior. So superior in itself is the comparative form. You're good and superior, but you can't be more superior than something else. You're just superior. It's like you can't be more faster. Anyway, if that's the worst thing I can say about your paper, Liam, I feel like this is not bad. And you know what? This is another thing. I can see myself in my hair sticking out. It may seem very picky. It may seem picky in your grammar or whatever on your papers. But care in speaking is just a habit, right? And it makes you look really good. So if you go in, I'm marketing things because they're useful, and I don't like to do that. But sometimes it's hard to see the use. And the real use is it makes you a different sort of person and develops a good habit. But if you're interviewing for a job, if I had 2 people interviewing for a job and one of them couldn't string sentences together and one of them could, I'm hiring the one that can string sentences together. Sorry, it's the way it is. So it's a good habit. Language is a great gift God gave us, but anyway, I'm sorry. Apparently I'm just in the preachy lecture mood today. All right, 2 begin with. We have an art, it's not really, it is art, it's architecture. This is another temple, obviously, in Athens. It is not up on the Acropolis. It's a temple of Hephaestus, however you want to say it, in the Agora, which is sort of like the Forum in a Roman city. It's the big open area with the courts and the prison and the shops and government offices and things like that. And this, I'm standing away from it, but you can see the people down there behind the hedge that are close to it. It's large, and it's basically unrestored. This is what it still looks like. It's the best preserved Greek temple in existence in the world. So this, except, you know, it's lost its paint. They've taken off the frieze, the decorative sculptures around the edge. But anyway, they still exist, and it just once upon a time must have been absolutely beautiful. So there's our look. I don't know the date. I feel like it was also built during this time period in the general beautification of Athens project, but I cannot say definitively Delian League money paid for this. But anyway, this is our, sit in front of my jellyfish. All right. You do not have any writing for next week. You have done a lot of writing for me over the past few weeks, and I am asking you to finish Thucydides for next week, and therefore just do that. Just do that, and really think about what you're reading. Try to maybe go back over some of the questions in your reading guide, because next week we will meet, and then we're going to have a break after that, right? So next week we meet normally, then it'll be 2 weeks before I see you again. And during that time, we're going to start reading some Plato, which is actually more entertaining than you might think. And I want you to write. I'm going to ask you to be writing about your experience of reading this. I'll give you a question to explore. And so I'm having you read all of Book 7, which is a shorter book. I don't even know if it has 100 paragraphs. And then parts of 8, not very many parts of 8. And one more thing about finishing it, Thucydides didn't finish this book. He died while he was still compiling it and putting things in order and writing. And so he lived to see the end of the war, but he didn't get it all written down. So this book will not tell you how the war ends. Sorry. But I will tell you how the war ends. I will give you very brief highlights of the rest of the war, things that it might be interesting to know next week. But it's not, part of your book isn't missing. He just didn't get it finished. So it ends rather abruptly and suddenly. All right. This week, they decided to sail to Sicily and start another war. I don't know what to say about that. Let's take a look at this situation. Thucydides introduces the topic by saying, they decided to go to Sicily, and if possible to conquer the island, most of them being ignorant of its size and of the number of its inhabitants, Hellenic or barbarian, and of the fact that they were undertaking a war not much inferior to that against the Peloponnesians. Hey, it's an island. It must be small. We can take it. It's a big island with a lot of people, and it's not very close. For the voyage round Sicily in a merchant vessel is not far short of 8 days. It takes 8 days to sail around the island. So we might ask the questions, why in the world would they want to do that? Just to remind you, they are in a treaty with Sparta, but nobody's really doing what the treaty says to do. Nobody's giving back the cities they're supposed to give, and they keep pushing the limits. You might remember I gave you the synopsis of, we're all going to be allies of Argos, and Argos is going to be allies of them, and should we be allies of them? And and it's like musical chairs. And they're just waiting for someone to cross the line that breaks the treaty, and everybody knows it's just a matter of time. So you could argue, well, they thought the war was over, and also they kind of hoped that they could recruit allies in Sicily and come back and whoop up on Sparta with the new allies. So it's obvious they didn't think the war was over. But yet they're going to sail away to Sicily and leave an unfinished war behind them. So one of the guys in charge was Nicias. And you might remember Nicias because he amusingly told Cleon, when Cleon said, oh, if we had men for generals, we'd go get those Spartan guys off that island, and if you let me do it, I'd take care of it just like that. And Nicias said, yeah, you go right ahead. If you would like to do that, you just go for it. It's that same Nicias. And I'm not sure if I read this. I know I read something from the life of Nicias last week. It's all right, Henley. I'd almost be disappointed if it didn't happen. He's described here by Plutarch, his biographer, as using excessive caution and delays. I feel like last week I read a description of him as being slow to move. This was Nicias. Very, very cautious. I'll look again at that later. So he was one of the guys they wanted to be in charge of this expedition. He didn't even want to go. He thought it was a stupid idea. And but a group of Sicilians from the city of Egesta. If you have your book, do you have your book? Get your book. And let's just take a look at a map here. Oh, I know. The sigh. Oh, we have to look at the map. Page 363. Let's just take a look at where Sicily is and what drags them there, supposedly. Sicily is the island that, oh, do you not have yours? Oh, really? Well, here, use mine. Here, Liam, come get mine. I'm going to need it back, but I can describe it. Look at this map. Okay, so Sicily is the island that Italy is kicking, the boot of Italy is kicking. And of course, it doesn't look very far away from Greece. And it's not. You can sail there in days, not weeks. However, the Mediterranean is notoriously fast to have storms whip up. And at certain times of year, it's quite dangerous. And so you might recall the story in the book of Acts where Paul the Apostle Paul was being taken to Rome, and they stopped in Crete. I don't know if Crete is on that map. It's probably in the big, okay. They stopped in Crete, and they were headed to Italy. So again, it doesn't look very far. And the wind was blowing, and they put it in a harbor, and Paul said, look, you don't want to pull out of this harbor because it's risky. And I mean, this is a lot of gall because he's lecturing the owner of the ship. I don't know if he's lecturing the owner of the ship or the captain, but you don't want to do it. I'm like, oh, shut up, Paul. So what they did on Crete, here's the island of Crete. They were on the, could I say the outside of Crete? The part facing the rest of the Mediterranean. And all they really wanted to do was go around the end of Crete and get to a harbor in the interior. They didn't even make it. And the wind grabbed them and whisked them off to the island of Malta, which is a small island. Okay, here's Sicily, Malta. It's farther away from Italy than Sicily is. Melita is what they called it then. Anyway, point being, once you get to Sicily, there are times of year when you're just going to be stuck there. You're not going to get back to Greece. And you're not going to be able to bring supplies in. You're just going to be stuck there. So this makes it, even though it doesn't look very far on the map, it makes it risky. Okay, so the town of Egesta, is it Egesta or Egestia? Just in Sicily. It's on the north, it's on the western kind of, Egestia, okay. Because he calls them the Egestians, but okay, Egestia. The Egestians came to Athens and said, would you please help us? Now, let's pause. Why would these people living in Sicily even think any Greeks would want to be mixed up in their business? What is there about Sicily that makes those towns think that Greek cities would care what happens to them? Do you remember? Sicily was settled by Greeks. These are Greek colonies. Now, this was many, many, many years ago, hundreds of years ago, right? But they still, it's not, I mean, pretty much all of us Americans know we're British. We started as a British colony, but because we had a war with them and said we don't want you to be in charge anymore, and also because we've had many, many people come from other parts of the world to America, and we don't think of it that way. But even they never had a war saying we don't want to be your colony anymore. They just grew and grew and went their own way, but they still remember we're Greek. They think of themselves as Greek. It's as if we still thought of ourselves as British. It's what it was like. So the Egestians go to Athens and say, the people in Selinus are giving us grief. And we've always been pals of yours. And would you come just shake your finger in the face of the people in Selinus and tell them to mind their own business? And while you're at it, we think you should know that the people in Leontini, which is closer to Syracuse, over on the other side, have been driven out by the people of Syracuse, and the people of Syracuse have taken over. And I think you should just tell those Syracusans to get out of Leontini and mind their own business. Why don't you come? And hey, we'll pay you. If you'll send ships and men, we have money to pay you. So they sent some envoys, and sounds very mercenary, but you know, ships and soldiers cost money, and they wanted to know if money was there. So they went to Egestia and they said, where's the money? Like, oh, come on in. Look, we've made a dinner for you, and look at all these silver dishes, and everything was very lavish, and everything was made of gold and silver. And so the envoys went back to Athens and said, big thumbs up on the money, because apparently these guys are rolling in money.
Best of the best stuff they got.
Yeah. Turns out, though, that a bunch of that stuff they borrowed from their neighbors, and they took it out of temples and stuff just to show off. It wasn't really all theirs. They had the equivalent of 3 talents. 3 talents was quite a bit of money. but it wouldn't go very far for ships and men. They wouldn't be able to stay very long. They didn't find this out until much later, till they'd already brought the troops there, which was shifty, I know. All right, so I need to go warm up my tea. My husband needs to get me that thing that, keeps it warm. And Liam, you can set my book back on my chair. That will do, as far as the tea goes. So, Nicias knows all of this, right? He's got a character that's very cautious. He realizes that once we get there, there's going to be times of year we can't sail back and forth. He realizes that maybe before you attack a place, it's a good idea to check it out and see maybe how big it is and how many soldiers they have and whatnot. So he tries to convince them that this is a bad idea. And I realize the first question is about Alcibiades, but I want to look at what Nicias has to say first. He really does his best to try. So here's some of what Nicias says to them. He says, first of all, I affirm that you leave many enemies behind you here to go there far away and bring back more with you. Do you not already have enough enemies here? Do you need to go make enemies there? This is a very good point. The Egestians, our allies, have been wronged, and we run to help them, while the rebels who have so long wronged us still wait for punishment. Whatever we may think of the Athenian habit of going and beating up on their allies if their allies rebel, it's certainly, remember I talked about expedient? It's certainly expedient. And so they've got people rebelling left and right. And Nicias says, so we're just going to ignore that and go off and help an ally in Sicily. The Sicilians, even if conquered, are too far off and too numerous to be ruled without difficulty. If we conquer them, what are we going to do with them? If you get conquered, what do you do as soon as the conquerors leave and go home? You do anything you want. What are they going to do about it? Maybe they won't even know. This is kind of why India never became part of the Hellenistic Empire. Alexander the Great marched all the way to India. None of his guys want to stay in India. They want to go home. They turn around and leave, and then the guys in India do anything they want. Nicias says, what's the point? How many people are going to die? And how much money are we going to spend for something we can't even hold on to? We also should remember that we are only now enjoying some respite from the great pestilence and from war, to the no small benefit of our estates and persons. We get this treaty going. Finally, nobody's sick, nobody's dying of a plague, and we're not actively at war. And that it is right to employ these, our estates, our persons, our health, our peace, at home on our own behalf, instead of using them on behalf of these exiles whose interest it is to lie as well as they can, and who do nothing but talk themselves and leave the danger to others, and who, if they succeed, will show no proper gratitude, and if they fail, will drag down their friends with them. And if there be any man here, overjoyed at being chosen to command, who urges you to make the expedition merely for ends of his own, especially if he's still too young to command, who seeks to be admired for his stud of horses, but on account of heavy expenses, hopes for some profit from his appointment, do not allow such a one to maintain his private splendor at his country's risk. But remember that such persons injure the public fortune while they squander their own, and that this is a matter of importance and not for a young man to decide or hastily to take in hand. If there happens to be anybody here, oh, I don't know, some young guy who maybe keeps horses and he's telling us we should go because he thinks he's going to make a boatload of cash off this and get a lot of power, you do not want to listen to that sort. This sounds very specific, doesn't it? And it is. He is talking about Alcibiades. Alcibiades, this is how his biographer Plutarch describes him. He intermingled exorbitant luxury and wantonness in his eating and drinking and dissolute living, wore long purple robes like a woman, which dragged after him as he went through the marketplace, caused the planks of his galley to be cut away so that he might lie the softer, his bed not being placed on the boards but hanging upon girths. The ship he was on, he cut, instead of laying in his sleeping bag, he cut a hole in it so he could hang a hammock through the hole. He just didn't want to be uncomfortable. His shield, again, which was richly gilded, had not the usual ensigns of the Athenians, but a cupid. He has a cupid painted on his shield, holding a thunderbolt in his hand. The sight of all this made the people of good repute in the city feel disgust and abhorrence, and apprehension also at his free living and his contempt of law as things monstrous. And about the horses, where Plutarch tells us about this. He kept horses and he entered them, and he actually won tons of times in the Olympic Games. He was the first person to win the first three prizes. It's like he won the gold, silver, and bronze. Of course, he didn't drive the horses, right? It's like the Kentucky Derby winner is the owner of the winning horse, not the guy who rode the horse. So Alcibiades was the owner and manager. Nicias is pointing him out and saying, we don't want to listen to that sort. How do you think Alcibiades is going to feel about that? Being called out in public. No, he's not going to like that at all. Nicias goes on to say he wants everybody to remember how rarely success is gained by wishing and how often by forecast. Such were the words of Nicias. By far the warmest advocate of the expedition was, however, Alcibiades, son of Clinias, who wished to thwart Nicias, both as his political opponent and also because of the attack he had made on him in his speech, and who was, besides, exceedingly ambitious of a command, by which he hoped to reduce Sicily and Carthage, and personally to gain in wealth and reputation by means of his success. Just to remind us, you don't have to look back in the book, but I will hold it up again. You remember the big map. Guys, here's Sicily. Look how close it is to Africa. Look how close it is to Carthage. Carthage is the little town on the part that sticks out right there. This explains why, in later history, Rome and Carthage are fighting each other in Sicily. It's right in between. Apparently, Alcibiades has very high hopes. I'm going to take over Sicily. I'm going to take over Carthage. He mentions this later. There's no sign that he shared this plan with Athens, but this apparently was his personal plan. So he is not going to let this go. He's not going to listen to Nicias. And Thucydides describes him as someone who indulged his tastes beyond what his real means would bear. What does that mean? He indulged his tastes beyond what his real means would bear. Can you say that in normal words? Those are normal words, but you know what I mean. He spends more money than he has because he likes to live very well. Your means are what you have to live on. He indulged his tastes beyond what his means would bear. He spends all his money. He spends more money than he has. So he needs money all the time. Both in keeping horses and in the rest of his expenditure. And in his private life, his habits gave offense to everyone. So he gets up and he wants to overturn everything that that Nicias has said. Now, this is the first question I asked you. Why does Alcibiades want to go? First of all, we just said apparently he wants to eventually attack Carthage. Why else? What other reasons does he give for going?
A lot of money in it.
There's money in it. And of course, he doesn't say money for me. There's money for us. I'm thinking of you guys. I have your best interests at heart. They're wealthy. We can take it. Any other good reasons to go? He needs money. Athens needs money.
It'd be easy pickings.
They're easy pickings, according to Alcibiades, who may or may not know anything about it. He says, the cities in Sicily are peopled by motley rabbles. They're a bunch of yokels. And easily change their institutions and adopt new ones in their stead. They're very fickle. We can bring them over to us. They're not very strong. They haven't really given themselves a chance to entrench and become strong. They're changing all the time. Moreover, the Sicilians have not so many hoplites as they boast. They don't have as many soldiers as they claim to have. The states in Sicily, therefore, from all that I can hear, will be found as I say. Oh, it's totally, I know. It will be found as I say. This is the way it is. He also comes up with another one. This one's a little, I wonder what you think of this one. Moreover, we cannot fix the exact point at which our empire shall stop. We have reached a position in which we must not be content with retaining what we have, but must scheme to extend it. For if we cease to rule others, we shall be in danger of being ruled ourselves. What is he arguing?
Eat or be eaten.
That's very good, Liam. Yeah. Once you have an empire, you got to keep moving. Because even standing still is falling behind. You got to keep expanding and expanding and expanding, or what the ones you already have control of will think you look weak. It's a good point. How do you say these are the borders of our empire? Whatever you want them to be. In Rome, finally, they decided the Danube River was going to be a border simply because they never could conquer those Germans on the other side. They kept giving them grief. They said, okay, whatever. This will be the edge. But many of their edges were water, coast. So Alcibiades is saying, are we big enough yet? I don't think so. And if we stop acquiring, we'll look weak. And do not let the passive policy which Nicias advocates, or his setting of the young against the old, turn you from your purpose. Neither youth nor old age can do anything the one without the other. The old need the exuberance and enthusiasm of the young, and the young need the wisdom and the caution of the old. This is not a young versus old, says Alcibiades. This is something in which we work together for the good of Athens. Such were the words of Alcibiades. After hearing him, and the Egestians and some Leontine exiles, remember Leontini, that we also want to deal with. The Athenians became more eager for the expedition than before. It's not what Nicias wanted. Nicias, perceiving that it would now be useless to try to deter them by the old line of argument, but thinking that he might perhaps alter their resolution by the extravagance of his estimates, came forward a second time and spoke as follows. All right, here's Nicias. This isn't working. They are just dead set that they're going to go to Sicily. How am I going to derail this? All right. Explaining to them that it's far away, this is not working. But maybe if I tell them, this is going to cost a bunch of cash. We're going to need a lot of ships and a lot of men and a lot of food. And maybe they'll say, oh, I don't know if we want to spend that much. So the extravagance of his estimates. Hey, Nicias, what do you think it's going to take Sicily? Oh, I don't know. Let me see. And he's just going to tell him astronomical sums, thinking that this will put him off. So he says, from all that I hear, we are going against cities that are great and not subject to one another, or in need of change, or to be in the least likely to accept our rule in exchange for freedom. They're full of hoplites, archers, and dart throwers. Their chief advantage over us lies in the number of their horses and in the fact that they grow their grain at home instead of importing it. They'll always have food. We'll have to bring in everything we eat. So, it will not do to merely have a weak naval armament. We shall also want a large land army to sail with us. And of course, if you're bringing a land army, you got to bring food and you got to bring them on boats and the food on boats. So we need more boats. He says, remember, we're cutting ourselves off and going to a land entirely strange, from which during 4 months in winter it is not even easy for a messenger to get to Athens. We must have an overwhelming superiority at sea to enable us to bring in what we want. With this, Nicias concluded, thinking that he should either put the Athenians off by the magnitude of the undertaking, or if obliged to sail on the expedition, would do so in the safest way possible. It's a win-win, says Nicias. Okay, either they're going to listen to me and say, yeah, we can't do that. Or they're going to say, okay, we'll give you everything you want, in which case I will be very well prepared. It turned out he did not put them off. The Athenians, far from having their enthusiasm for the voyage destroyed by the burdensomeness of the preparations, became more eager for it than ever. And just the contrary took place of what Nicias had thought, as it was held that he had given good advice and that the expedition would be the safest in the world. Everyone fell in love with the enterprise. And here's another answer to the first question. The older men thought that they would either subdue the places against which they were to sail, or at all events, with so large a force, meet with no disaster. The older men, okay, at the best, we're going to conquer brand new places for Athens. At the worst, everything will be fine because we have so many men with us and so many weapons and so many ships. Those in the prime of life felt a longing for foreign sights and spectacles, and had no doubt that they should come safe home again. While the idea of the common people and the soldiery was to earn wages at the moment and make conquests that would supply a never-ending fund of pay for the future. Back to what Liam said. There's money in it. I'm going to make a buck by signing up for the expedition. Maybe there'll be some plunder handed out. And at the very least, we'll get more money pouring into the city in which I live, and I will benefit. That's what everybody thinks. With this enthusiasm of the majority, the few that did not like it feared to appear unpatriotic by holding up their hands against it, and so kept quiet. Nicias says they have to have 100 triremes, 100 warships, plus transports, 5,000 soldiers, and all other arms in proportion. This is what we got to pack up and take over there. And they say, yeah, let's do it. They put Nicias, Alcibiades, and a guy whose name I can't ever remember, Lamachus. We'll call him Lamachus until I am corrected by myself when I find it. So 1/3 of the force doesn't even want to go. Thinks it's all a bad idea, but thinks he's convinced him to send so many ships and so many soldiers. There's no way it will end badly. All right. However, why was Alcibiades recalled from the Sicilian campaign? I asked you what was his response, but let's hit the first one first. They sent him off, and then they made Alcibiades come home. Why? What happened?
They didn't want him to turn into like a tyrant. They thought he'd take over.
Well, there were people who feared this. This is true. But an event happened right before they were supposed to leave.
I think they accused him of destroying some statues.
Yeah. One night, somebody went out and mutilated, vandalized statues of Hermes. They have the habit of having statues of Hermes. It's the popular thing in Athens, all right? These little, the Herms, they call them, the statues. Somebody went out and vandalized them. Well, this is not nice. You don't vandalize statues of the gods, right? And they thought, is this a bad omen? Who would do such a thing? And they started inquiring. And it says, information was accordingly given by some resident aliens and body servants, not about the Hermi, but of some previous mutilations of other images perpetrated by young men in a drunken frolic, and of mock celebrations of the mysteries alleged to have taken place in private houses. Okay. Not far from Athens is a town called Eleusis, and it's sacred to Demeter. And you would go there, and if you wanted to join the club, there were special initiation rites, and they were secret. They were top secret. You weren't allowed to tell anybody about what went on. And these were the mysteries, right? The sacred mysteries of Demeter. And it's sort of like if somebody did a mock communion or mass and made fun of it. All right, that sort of thing. But it would be like if somebody did a mock communion or mass, but it was top secret. Mass was top secret, and somebody did that. So these resident aliens, people who were living there, but they aren't Athenian, and some slaves said, I don't know anything about this particular event, but once upon a time, I know that some young men got drunk and went out and vandalized some statues and did a mock, mysteries, Demeter's mysteries. When Alcibiades was implicated in this charge, it was taken up by those who could least endure him, because he stood in the way of their obtaining the undisturbed leadership of the people, and who thought if he was once removed, the first place would be theirs. So, Alcibiades, we already read, Plutarch tells us, he's kind of a wild party boy. He likes his fancy clothes, and he likes his nice dinners, and he likes his horses. He spends way too much money, more money than he has. And he gets drunk on occasion and pulls stupid stunts. Nobody can prove he did it this time. Nobody really can prove he did it before. But he hangs out. And what happens? The guys who hate Alcibiades jump on it. Oh, yeah. Oh, I think he's mixed up on this. We need to check this out. Alcibiades is disgusted, and it says he immediately denied the charges in question and also offered to stand trial before going on the expedition, for which the preparations were now complete. They were ready to sail for Sicily, so that it might be determined whether he was guilty of the acts imputed to him, as he was willing to be punished if found guilty, but ready, if acquitted, to take the command. Hey, you think I did something wrong? Put me in trial. Bring your witnesses forward. Prove it. I want to be cleared of the cloud over my name before I leave to go take over the world, as he thinks. This is fair? And what do his opponents say? Oh, no, you go ahead. We'll look into it. We'll let you know if we need you. But here's what Thucydides tells us is their real plan. Their plan being to have him sent for and brought home for trial upon some graver charge, which they would the more easily trump up in his absence. What does that mean? What are they going to do? What's the plan?
Accuse him of something, of him doing something really bad while he's gone, so he can't do anything about it.
Yeah. And what might they have to do to accuse him of something really bad?
Do something really bad.
Well, yeah, or make up something. Trump up, right? We're going let's find some way to get this guy. We don't want to do it fast. Let's send him away, and while he's gone, we'll sniff into his background. We'll quiz all his servants, and we'll find something to bring that guy down.
Dig up some dirt.
We'll dig up some dirt. So they sent him away. They headed out to the port. They're just a few miles from Athens, and Thucydides says this was the first moment that they really realized how big a deal it was when they saw all these ships and all these men. The armament that first sailed out was by far the most costly and splendid Hellenic force that had ever been sent out by a single city up to that time. So, I'm going to switch back to what's happening in Sicily and Syracuse in a minute. But they sent the Salaminia is one of the state ships. It's like sending Air Force One, right? They sent the Salaminia for him and said, Alcibiades, we need to bring you back to the city to be tried for your crimes. What was his response? In other words, what did Alcibiades do?
He ran away.
Yeah, he jumped ship on the coast of Italy, ran off with his companions, crossed over to the Peloponnese, and the next time we see him, he's in Sparta giving the Spartans advice about the war. Over to the enemy. However, we might forgive him a little bit because they passed sentence of death on him in Athens in his absence. If he ever comes back, sentence of death. Alcibiades is not done. We're going to be meeting him again in books 7 and 8. He's got more tricks up his sleeve. Okay, let us take a look at what happens in Syracuse, the big city in Sicily, when rumor gets out that Athens is sailing to Sicily. Hold on, I'm going to finish my tea. Because it's cold again. We get another debate, series of speeches that I want to look at. First guy gets up, and his name is Hermocrates. And basically, he gets up and says, I want to warn you that Athens is on the way. I have it on good authority that a huge force is sailing out. But don't worry, he says. They cannot be more numerous than the people of the country and their neighbors whom fear unites. What does Athens hope to do? In other words, what did Alcibiades say the towns in Sicily are like?
Very small.
They're small. They're just a bunch of hayseeds, a bunch of yokels, and you know what? They'll just come over to our side. They'll be overawed. They've never seen anything as magnificent as the force we're taking over. And when they see it, they'll say, "Oh, we want to be on your side." Besides, we hate Syracuse. Syracuse is the big city, and they just boss us all around. I don't want to be bossed around. I'm going to go in with Athens. Hermocrates in Syracuse says, what do we have to do? He says, they can't be more than people whom fear unites. If all Sicily holds together, we could take them on. Isn't that divide and conquer? Right? We know this, that if you go up against anything big, a big project, it doesn't have to be a war, anything big that you need to do, overwhelming, you take it a little piece at a time, you get a little thing done, you take out one, obstacle, and then face the next one. But if you can't take them apart, it's hard. So this is very good advice. And maybe unknowingly, he doesn't know that back in Athens they're saying, oh, those cities in Sicily, they'll just be overawed and they'll come over to us. Hermocrates says, for united by a common fear of Athens, we're fine. He says, this is actually a chance for us. These very Athenians rose by the defeat of the Persians, in a great measure due to accidental causes. From the mere fact that Athens had been the object of his attack, and this may very well be the case with us too. What happened to Athens? How did Athens get so big and powerful? Persia attacked. Persia was after Athens, and Hermocrates says, yeah, and they had a lot of really good luck. Ships rammed each other in Salamis. Who knows how they beat them at Marathon? They had good luck. And then everyone was, oh, Athens, you're so wonderful. Will you be our leader? Look how powerful they got. He said, now the big power from over the sea is coming for us. We hope for good luck. We pray for the gods to help us. And this might be our moment to shine. We might be king of the heap. Syracuse can take over all of Sicily. Maybe Syracuse can send troops over there. But this is kind of disturbing to me. When we read Herodotus, who were the bad guys? Who were the villains of the... I mean, not all the individual villains, but in the story of the Persian Wars, who are we supposed to feel is the bad guys? The Persians. This guy in Syracuse just said, hey, you know what this is like? This is like Athens and Persia, except in this case, who are the bad guys? They've turned into the thing they fought. You see? It's kind of sad. But they've turned into the bullies who go grab other people's countries for no good reason. All right. So, what is Hermocrates' plan? He says, we need to get ready for them. Also, we need to keep alive the war in Hellas. We need to send messengers to Sparta and say, hey, Sparta, this would be a really good time to attack Athens. To attack anything Athens owns. Any of their lands, any of their allies. Especially as their most experienced general has, as I hear, taken command against his will. I hear their most revered general, Nicias, doesn't even want to come. Oh, they'll be willing to deal. He doesn't even want to be here. And he says, the best course for the present is to accept the preparations which fear inspires as giving the surest promise of safety and to act as if the danger was real. All right, we don't know exactly how many ships they're coming with and men they're coming with, but let's get ready for them. Right? I like Hermocrates. He sounds like a good guy. Another guy stands up. This is Euphemus, and this is the last question I asked you. Oh, actually not. I'm sorry. Athenagoras. I'm sorry, it's not Euphemus. Athenagoras gets up. Listen to what he says back. Those who carry such tidings that the Athens is on its way and fill you with such alarm, I wonder less at their audacity than at their folly if they flatter themselves we do not see through them. The fact is they have their private reasons to be afraid, and these stories are concocted by men who are always causing agitation here in Sicily. Does Athenagoras even believe this is real? No, he says they concocted the story. Why would they want to do that? He says, they are trying by such stories and by others to frighten the people and take over the government. How do you take over? This is something that gets... Oh, see, I thought we were done at noon for a minute. I'm like, what? This is something that gets talked about in modern politics. You want to take over, or you want to pull some stunt and reorganize the government. What do you do to make sure people don't notice what you're doing? We all know this. And sometimes we wonder if it's being done to us. Sometimes when the government and the media, I'm not trying to turn you into conspiracy theorists or anything, and I'm not, but it's not conspiracy theory. It happened. It's happened for thousands of years. We'd be silly to think governments don't do that sometimes. They cause a diversion. There's suddenly a crisis. And we, unfortunately, because America has been through a lot, we have become a little cynical, and we sort of wonder every time, like, yeah, is this really a crisis? Or what is it you don't want me to be noticing? What are you up to that I'm not supposed to see? This is exactly what Athenagoras says Hermocrates is doing. Because he says, what idiots would Athens be to come here? He says, it is not likely that they would leave the Peloponnesians behind them. And before they have well ended the war in Hellas, wantonly come in quest of a new war, quite as arduous in Sicily. Indeed, in my judgment, they're only too glad if we don't go attack them, being so many and so great cities as we are. I do not well see how they could avoid annihilation if they brought with them another city as large as Syracuse. That would be completely daft, says Athenagoras, for Athens to come here. And of course, it is exactly what they're doing, and it is completely daft. Nicias knows it. But Athenagoras smells a conspiracy, which I just think is we don't hear anything else about it. And Hermocrates is right, and they are coming. But it's just very interesting that this is the first thing he jumps to. Oh, that would never happen. What are you up to? Are you trying to take over the government? Well, very rapidly they discover that it is true. And again, remember, Hermocrates says we need to stay solid. Alcibiades says they're a bunch of yokels and we'll overawe them and they'll come over to us one by one. Well, I have highlighted various spots, and I'm just going to read them. Okay, and it describes them going to the coast of Italy and going to the coast of Sicily, and here's what happened. Met with no success, being refused admittance. The inhabitants refused to receive the armament. refused to receive them. Is it working out the way they planned? It is not. Everybody said, yeah, we're not going to get mixed up in that. Move along. We're not joining you. Move along. Well, great. We thought we were going to have tons of allies, and everybody was just going to say, yay for Athens. They've come to rescue us from Syracuse. And it's not happening. So, meanwhile, they come pick up Alcibiades, take him home, and then suddenly, there is a long section in which we're talking about Pisistratus' sons. Do you remember this? Hippias and Hipparchus, and how he was. Did you understand? Why is he talking about this? It's very random. Suddenly we're talking about this. Was this clear to you? He just jumped ship in the middle, it seems like, but he actually didn't. And it's kind of interesting because we're here learning history. It's interesting for historical purposes. Here's what he says. When Alcibiades left, they needed to get some dirt on him, right? Dig up all the skeletons he has in his closet, as they say. So it says that instead of testing the informers, in their suspicious temper, they welcomed all indifferently. You can inform on anyone, anything, and we'll believe you. You can be a notorious liar and rascal, but we'll believe you now because we're so desperate for dirt. They start throwing people in prison on suspicion of, I don't know, celebrating the mock mysteries or vandalism or public drunkenness or whatever. And it says, the people had heard how oppressive the tyranny of Pisistratus and his sons had become before it ended. And that this tyranny had been put down at last, not by themselves and Harmodius, but by the Spartans. So were always in fear and took everything suspiciously. Okay, this is the key. So, just to remind you, we read about this in Herodotus. Pisistratus was tyrant. He took over. He was the guy who had the beautiful, tall woman in the chariot and said, be Athena for me. He was the guy who, and Athena said, you must welcome Pisistratus back. He was the guy who hired people to beat him up and then went into the city and said, oh, people, I have enemies. I need a bodyguard. When he died, his sons Hippias and Hipparchus took over. His son Hippias was the eldest and took over. But he wasn't as nice as his dad. And finally, some Athenians bribed the prophetess at Delphi, the oracle, that every time the Spartans went to the oracle to tell them, oh, you must get rid of the tyranny in Athens. Every time they went to ask him anything, it's like, no, by the way, you should get rid of the tyranny in Athens. So the Spartans came in and helped over the tyranny. And you might remember Hippias ran off and ended up coming back with Xerxes and was giving him advice about Sparta. Okay, that's in the past. This was about 100 years before all this happened. So let's look at the jump-off point. He says, everybody's always suspicious of everything in Athens because we don't want a tyrant. We don't want the tyranny because remember Pisistratus? Then he says this. Indeed, the daring action of Aristogeiton and Harmodius, they're the ones who assassinated Hipparchus, Hippias's brother, was undertaken in consequence of a love affair, which I shall relate at some length, to show that the Athenians are no more accurate than the rest of the world in their accounts of their own tyrants or the facts of their own history. He's giving us a history lesson because his point is, you know what? The Athens got wigged out over this whole mutilation of the statues and somebody's going to take over the government. Why? Because they don't even know their own history very well. They're really bad at history. And they think that, that Sparta had to come in. Do they even know it all went down because these people were in love, and this one dissed this one, and then somebody came and was angry and came and killed. That's what happened. You people are freaking out over something that didn't even happen the way you think it happened. And I find this interesting because we're sitting here studying history. And I'll tell you flat out, my American history is quite poor. I mean, I know the big things. It doesn't interest me as much, but it puts me in an easy position for anything that the government might want to do or groups might want to do, because I don't remember how it went down before. And that's Thucydides's whole point. If you don't remember how things went down, you don't know how to react the next time, and you either underreact or overreact. And he said Athens was way overreacting. By the way, you might be wondering, perhaps, well, who did mutilate them? Nobody knows. They never found out. All we know is a bunch of people got punished and put in jail. But because slaves were tortured, I think we all see that confessions or any information given under torture is probably suspect. So this is why he goes on this little side trail. He says, you Athenians, you don't even know history. So everybody freaked out and made it a much bigger deal than it was and went after Alcibiades. Okay, back to the main story. I think I'm going to ask you to look at a map again. Oh, come on. Oh, 419. All right. Look at this map. This is Syracuse. This is a close-up of Syracuse. And there's a high, that Epipoli and the Temenites area, it's a high hill overlooking Syracuse. In other words, it's a really good military position because you got the high ground. And the wall, it says Athenian wall or something like that. Do you see? They want to enclose that area in a wall. And so after sailing around the coast and having no luck getting anyone to join them, they decide to march towards Syracuse and take up a position up there. And they're going to enclose themselves in a wall so they can't get attacked. And then they're going to basically put their fleet in the water in front of Syracuse, be behind Syracuse, and starve them out. Now, do you see the walls that shoot out? What did the Syracusans decide to do? What? Yeah, before Athens could get their wall finished, like, dudes, let's just build a big fat wall right in their way. And when they hit it, they're either going to have to stop, or they're going to have to go around it, or they're going to have to stop long enough to disassemble our wall, and we can just attack them. This is the plan, and this is the layout of the area. You're going to, the whole Sicily campaign is going to finish up in book 7. You're going to be seeing that layout again. There's battles up there. You can give me my book back. Come on. I want to go back and look at another problem that they had, and I'm not totally sure if I'm going to be able to find it. So give me a moment. When they first got there, oh no, it's before Alcibiades got picked up. Okay, here we go. Okay. The generals discussed what was to be done. The opinion of Nicias was to sail with all the armament to Selinus, the main objective of the expedition. They're the ones the Aegistians are having trouble with. And if the Augustians could provide money for the whole force, make their plans accordingly. But if not, to require them to supply provisions for 60 ships, stay, settle the matters between them and the Selinuntines, coast past the other cities, and after displaying the power of Athens, sail home again. This is Nicias's plan. Go fix the whole thing between Aegustia and Selinus, sail around the island and say, we're awesome, and then go home. Alcibiades said that a great expedition like the present must not disgrace itself by going away without having accomplished anything. Heralds must be sent to all the cities, except Selinus and Syracuse, and efforts be made to make them revolt from the Syracusans and gain their friendship. Build up allies. Lamachus, on the other hand, said they ought to sail straight to Syracuse, fight their battle at once under the walls of the city, while the people were still unprepared and the panic at its height. Every armament was most terrible at first. If it allowed time to run on without showing itself, men's courage revived, and they saw it appear at last almost with indifference. By attacking suddenly, while Syracuse still trembled at their coming, they would have the best chance of gaining a victory for themselves. Actually, I think he probably had the best advice. Having spoken to this effect, Lamachus nevertheless gave his support to the opinion of Alcibiades. And of course, this is the point at which refused admittance, would not admit them. By the time they're going to get to Syracuse, Syracuse isn't afraid anymore. All right. Let us hit this last question. This is an embassy. Camarina is a city in Sicily. And they send an ambassador trying to get them to join their force, the Athenian force. And what determines, according to this ambassador, what it's reasonable to do? He's trying to convince them, you should be friendly to us. You should turn your backs on Sicily and be friendly to us. What is it reasonable to do, and what determines who you should be allied with, who you should be friends with? And I told you what paragraph to find it in. What do you got, Liam?
I said expedience was one of the things I wrote down.
Mm-hmm.
I also said treat them how you find them, and you should be guided by your own interest and fear.
Yeah, exactly it. This is the exact quote. For tyrants and imperial cities, nothing is unreasonable if expedient. If it's in your best interests, it's reasonable. Camarina, is it in your best interest to be allies with Athens, with us? Then you should do it. Nothing is unreasonable if it's expedient. Again, this is the third week in a row, isn't it, that we've visited this theme. What's in your best interests? Is it in our best interest to execute all the grown men in Mitylene? That's the only thing we should talk about. Is it in our best interests to have mercy on the people on the island of Melos? Or take them and execute them all? And here again, this Athenian envoy says, hey, I know you're Sicilian, but what's in your best interests? He goes on to say, no one is a kinsman unless sure, but friendship or enmity is everywhere a matter of time and circumstance. If someone is your friend now, if someone is your ally now, will they always be? According to Euphemus, circumstances change. Times change. And maybe the person you were friendly with before, they're now your enemy. This is how Athens is operating now. This is their code of conduct. When we start reading Plato and talk about Socrates, you will find out not everybody agreed with this code of conduct. And there were people in Athens saying, shouldn't we ask questions like, what is justice? Surely it's not just what's in your best interests. But that's the policy they're operating under. So when we catch up with Alcibiades, as we said before, he is now in Sparta. He's giving advice to Sparta. Oh, by the way, I want to read this before we move back to Alcibiades. This is Nicias and his excessive caution and delays. This, when he got to Sicily, this was no longer a time for his excessive caution and delays. Nor was it for him like a child to look back from the ship, often repeating and reconsidering over and over again how that his advice had not been overruled by fair arguments, whereas he ought speedily to have closed with the enemy and brought the matter to an issue, and put fortune immediately to the test of battle. But on the contrary, when Lamachus counseled to sail directly to Syracuse and fight the enemy under their walls, Alcibiades advised them to secure the friendship of the other towns and to march against them. Nicias dissented from them both and insisted that they should cruise quietly around the island and display their armament. And he made no end of loitering and of cruising and of considering till their hopes were grown stale. All right. We will read the rest of Nicias' story in book 7. Okay, so envoys came to Sparta from Sicily and said, you need to either attack Athens or you need to send some help here. You can fight it out with Athens here in Sicily. We'll help you. And Alcibiades is there, and he's worried because it says they showed no inclination to send them any assistance. So Alcibiades gets up and he says, okay, it's time for me to speak. He says, I now call your attention to the questions you must consider, and upon which superior knowledge perhaps permits me to speak. Oh, I know what I'm talking about. We sailed to Sicily, first to conquer, if possible, the Sicilians, and after them the Italians also, and finally to assail the empire and city of Carthage. In the event of all or most of these schemes succeeding, we were then to attack the Peloponnesus, bringing with us the entire force of the Hellenes lately acquired in those parts, and taking a number of barbarians into our pay, such as the Iberians, that's Spain, and others in those countries, with this fleet blockading the Peloponnesus from the sea and assailing it with our armies by land, to take them by storm, and after this rule the whole Hellenic world. According to Alcibiades, that's the plan. It's just in his head. We're taking over everything. This was step 1 in taking over everything. You have thus heard the history of the present expedition from the man who most exactly knows what our intentions were. So he gives us some advice. He says, send ships to Syracuse. He says, fortify Decelea in Attica. I'll just show you. So here's Attica, here's Athens, and Decelea is a town right here. Fortify it, which means what? Yeah, but make sure the walls are strong. Put a force there, a force that doesn't leave. Because what does Sparta do every year? We come over here, we burn some things, and we go home. They don't stay. He says, you need a base of operations. They're very close. Alcibiades tells him to do this. Keep this in mind because this is going to pop back up again for next week's reading. It's Alcibiades who told him to do this. Whatever property there is in the country, will most of it become yours, either by capture or surrender. And it will deprive them of revenue from their allies, and they will lose their awe of Athens. We'll take them out. And I don't know, what is your opinion of Alcibiades at this moment? What kind of person is this?
Reminds me of, is it Alexander Hamilton or is it one missionary war? I forget his name.
Is it Benedict Arnold?
It was somebody like
Somebody traitorous?
they swap sides.
They swap sides. This would be Benedict Arnold. I mean, do any of us have a high opinion of Alcibiades at this moment? He's giving advice to the enemy about how to take out his own home. I don't know how to sugarcoat it. And he realizes that's what they think of him. You know, nobody likes traitors in general. I mean, people use traitors, but nobody likes traitors. There's a famous story of early Rome where this Rome was still small and taking over neighboring cities in Italy. And this is in the Dorothy Mills book, you might remember. There was this teacher, and he taught some of the children of the leading men in the town. And they were being besieged by Rome, but he would bring the boys out for little field trips, you know, outside the walls and nature walks and stuff. And then one day, because he gets everybody used to the fact that he takes these boys out, one day he takes them and he just goes over to Rome. He just goes over to the Roman camp and he says, hey, here's a bunch of hostages. These are the sons of the leading men of the town. They will so bargain with you to get their sons back. And Rome was so disgusted because he was a dirty, rotten traitor. They not only didn't take him up on it, they told the boys to go pick up sticks and whack him all the way back to town, whack their teacher. Because nobody likes a traitor. It's just low. So Alcibiades knows this. So listen to what he says. I want to see what you think. I'm going to end with this. See what you think of this comment. Meanwhile, I hope that none of you will think any of the worse of me. After having hitherto passed as a lover of my country, I now actively join its worst enemies in attacking it, or will suspect what I say as the fruit of an outlaw's enthusiasm. You know, just because they threw me out, because I'm under sentence of death, you'll just think I want to get back at them. I have an axe to grind. I am not an outlaw from the iniquity of those who drove me forth. I am an outlaw from the iniquity of those who drove me forth. Not if you will be guided by me from your service. My worst enemies are not you, who only harmed your foes, but they who forced their friends to become enemies. And love of country is what I do not feel when I am wronged, but what I felt when secure in my rights as a citizen. Indeed, I do not consider that I am now attacking a country that is still mine. I am rather trying to recover one that is mine no longer. And the true lover of his country is not he who consents to lose it unjustly rather than attack it, but he who longs for it so much that he will go to all lengths to recover it. You know, my country's gone bad. The country I know and love, it's not there anymore. They just turn on their friends. They turn on people like me who serve them, and I just feel like my country is gone. But you know what? I love my country so much. I want her to return. I will fight for her to become what she used to be, even if it means joining her enemies to put her back in her place and turn her back into what she used to be. Do you believe him? I don't really believe him either. This always reminds me, I wrote it in the margin. Which of you has read Henry V with me? Did you read Henry V with me? Okay. Do you remember at the end? This will only mean something to Miriam, but it's fine. Talk to Miriam now. So, at the end of the play, they're meeting, and Catherine, he's going to marry Catherine, the French princess, and they leave him alone for a little while they're doing the peace terms. He's like, oh, Kate, and she's like, oh, it is not the custom of the girls of France to kiss before we are married. And he's like, oh, don't worry about that. We're kings and queens. We can do whatever we want. And then she says, is it possible that I could love the enemy of France? And he says, oh, Kate, I'm not the enemy of France. I love it so well, I will have it all mine, every square inch of it. That's not exactly word for word, but he says the exact same thing as Alcibiades. I love it so much, I will have it all mine. Sounds a little shifty. If I did you great harm as an enemy, I could likewise do you good service as a friend. Inasmuch as I know the plans of the Athenians, but I only guessed yours. So, this is where we leave Alcibiades. On his advice, they both fortify Decelea. So now Sparta has a continuous force in Attica. It's not a seasonal thing anymore. And they have fitted out ships, and Sparta is now sailing to Sicily to team up with Syracuse and fight them over there. And that is where we leave things. Read all of Book 7, and then only the portions of Book 8. It's really not, I don't even know if it's 30 paragraphs that we're reading out of Book 8. And find out how this thing ends. And just take a break from writing this week, and just put all your effort into finishing Thucydides. And congratulations, you will have read the 2 major history books of the ancient world.
I'm now well read.
You are now well read. I'll turn this off.